All right, let's jump right in today. We're diving deep into the Football Manifesto, a book that's got some pretty big ideas about the future of soccer here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, it definitely doesn't hold back.
No, not at all. It's really got this vision of the U.S. becoming a true global powerhouse in the sport.
Mm.
So we're going to break down those arguments and see if their roadmap to soccer domination actually makes sense.
It's got that kind of, intense, almost obsessive energy to it right from the start.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you can just feel the author's passion. It's less of a kind of like dry analysis and more of a heartfelt plea for change.
Yeah, like a manifesto, right?
Exactly. It almost reminded me of that scene in Close Encounters where the guy's like obsessed with building that model of Devil's Tower.
Totally. It's got that "this is my mission" vibe for sure. But what really caught my eye was the book's central claim. You ready for this?
Hit me with it.
They basically say that U.S. soccer and Major League Soccer, MLS, are actually holding the sport back, almost like working against their own team.
Whoa. Okay, that's a bold statement. So let's dive into that. What's the author's reasoning there?
Well, they start by making this distinction between soccer teams and football clubs,
Okay, interesting.
saying that real football clubs have this deep connection with their fans and the community, like almost part of the city's identity.
Yeah, think about clubs like Barcelona or Bayern Munich, right?
Okay.
They have these huge global followings, but they're also significantly owned by their fans, which the book argues contributes to their success.
And the book actually dives into these three different fan ownership models that these clubs use.
Oh, cool.
So you've got the Barcelona model, which is like full-on 100% fan ownership.
Wow.
And then there's the Bayern Munich model, which is based on the Bundesliga's 50% plus one rule,
Yeah.
which means fans hold the majority of voting rights.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got the Swansea City model, which is more like fans having a minority stake, but they still get a voice in club decisions.
I see. So like a range of different approaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the main takeaway is this idea of fan empowerment, like ensuring that the club's decisions actually reflect what the fans want, which, makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, those are the people who are like truly invested in the club's success.
Exactly. And then the book goes on to lay out these 5 key revenue drivers that top football clubs really excel at.
All right, let's hear them.
So you've got state-of-the-art venues, lucrative TV deals, strong commercial partnerships, robust talent development systems, and consistent participation in those like high-profile competitions.
Makes sense. So like hitting all the marks both on and off the field.
Right. But here's where the comparison gets a little uncomfortable for MLS.
Ah.
Because while MLS has definitely grown, it still lags way behind leagues like the English Premier League and the Bundesliga in all those areas.
The EPL and the Bundesliga, yeah, those are like the gold standard right now.
Exactly. And the book, it doesn't sugarcoat it. It straight up calls MLS a lid on the pressure cooker of real football demand in the USA,
Wow.
pointing to things like MLS's low salary cap, their reliance on expansion fees instead of organic revenue growth, and that infamous Beckham rule, the one that limits how many high-priced international players a team can sign.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a big deal when it came out.
Right. But the book argues that it's actually holding MLS back from truly competing on a global level.
Interesting.
And then there's this whole thing about MLS's single entity structure, which I don't know if you know about this, but it basically means that the league owns all the teams.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize.
Yeah, so it prevents individual owners from really going all in to improve their teams,
I see.
which the book says leads to enforced mediocrity across the league.
Okay, so like not exactly a recipe for global domination.
Right. But here's where things take a really wild turn. Are you ready for this?
Lay it on me.
The book accuses the NFL, the NFL, of actively working to suppress U.S. soccer's potential.
Wait, what? Like a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, it sounds crazy, right? But they actually lay out some pretty interesting evidence to support this claim. So let's dive into that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So we're talking about this whole NFL conspiracy thing, trying to keep U.S. soccer down. It's definitely a wild claim, but the book does make some interesting connections.
Yeah, basically they're saying that the NFL sees a successful U.S. soccer scene as like direct competition. Potentially taking away young athletes, viewers, sponsorship dollars, that whole thing.
Right. And some of the evidence is pretty compelling. Like you've got NFL owners who also have stakes in MLS teams.
Oh, interesting.
And then you've got teams sharing stadiums. And there are even some U.S. soccer policies that seem to be like suspiciously aligned with the NFL's interests.
That shared stadium thing is interesting. At first, it seems like a practical arrangement, right? But I can see how the book might argue that it kind of reinforces this idea that soccer is like the secondary sport in America.
Yeah, totally. Like always playing second fiddle to football.
Yeah.
Literally. And then there's Don Garber, the MLS commissioner. Apparently, he has a pretty influential role in FIFA, the international governing body of soccer,
Bro.
which raises the question of, like, whose interests he's really serving.
Right, right. Is it MLS? Is it U.S. soccer as a whole? Or could it even be, the NFL?
It's a tangled web for sure. This whole discussion actually reminds me of that lawsuit a while back, the one where the North American Soccer League, the NASL, tried to, like, challenge MLS's dominance.
Oh, yeah, the NASL lawsuit. They were accusing U.S. soccer of unfairly denying them Division I status, which basically prevented them from competing with MLS on a level playing field.
Right. And if I remember correctly, they ended up losing that lawsuit.
Yeah, they did.
Which basically just solidified MLS's position as, like, the only top-tier professional soccer league in the U.S.
And the book uses that as an example of, like, the monopoly mentality that they say has taken root in U.S. soccer.
Right.
With MLS and U.S. soccer working together to, control the sport and prevent real competition.
Okay, so we've got this potential conflict of interest with the NFL, a lack of true competition in the professional league structure, and then this whole debate about fan ownership. It's a lot to process. Like, where do we even begin to address all these issues?
Well, the book frames itself as a call to action for U.S. soccer fans, urging them to become more informed, more engaged, more demanding of change.
So not just complaining about the problems, but actually, like, trying to fix them.
Exactly. The book challenges fans to think like owners instead of just passively consuming the sport, to understand the business side of things, the importance of building strong, sustainable clubs, and the power of collective action.
It's about, like, taking ownership of the beautiful game and shaping its future here in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us back to that idea of fan ownership. The book argues it's not just a nice idea, it's a necessary step if we want to create a truly vibrant and competitive soccer culture in America.
But how do we get there? I mean, talking about fan ownership is one thing, but actually making it happen seems like a whole other challenge.
Well, it starts with education. Fans need to understand the different models of fan ownership that exist around the world, like the Barcelona model, the Bayern Munich model, the Swansea City model, all the ones we talked about earlier.
Right, so first we've got to learn from those who are already doing it successfully. But what else, like, what concrete steps can fans take to push for change?
The book talks about a multi-pronged approach. Forming supporter groups, engaging with local politicians, even considering pooling resources to invest in existing clubs or, potentially starting new ones.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the U.S. women's national team, the USWNT. I mean, their success is like a shining example of what's possible in U.S. soccer, right?
Oh, absolutely. A four-time World Cup champions, four-time Olympic gold medalists, their dominance is undeniable. But the book does bring up an interesting point. It highlights the stark contrast between their success and the struggles of the men's national team, the USMNT.
Yeah, it's kind of a head-scratcher.
It is.
You've got the USWNT consistently reaching the pinnacle of the sport, and then you've got the USMNT, struggling to even qualify for the World Cup sometimes.
Right, and the book suggests this discrepancy points to a flawed development system for male players in the U.S. Like, the current system is too fragmented, too focused on short-term gains, and not sufficiently integrated with the professional game.
So it's not just a talent gap. It's like a systemic issue.
Precisely. The book also talks about the pay disparity between the men's and women's national teams, which has obviously been a big topic of discussion for a long time.
Yeah, it is pretty mind-boggling that the USWNT, even with all their accomplishments, still earn significantly less than their male counterparts.
Yeah, and it speaks to that broader issue of gender inequality in sports. And the book argues that U.S. soccer needs to be a leader in addressing this imbalance.
The fight for equal pay is so important, and it's encouraging to see the USWNT at the forefront of that movement.
Totally. And the book emphasizes that it's not just about fairness, it's about recognizing and valuing the incredible talent and contributions of women athletes.
So we've got a lot on the table here. The NFL's potential influence, the call for fan ownership, the need for a more robust development system, and the fight for equal pay.
Right. We've got a lot to think about.
It's clear U.S. soccer faces some serious challenges.
Yeah, it does. But I think it's important to remember that challenges often present opportunities for growth and innovation. And that's where the book's vision for the future comes in. It's time to move beyond just diagnosing the problems and start exploring potential solutions.
Okay, so let's dive into that vision. What does the Football Manifesto propose as the way forward for U.S. soccer?
All right, so we've dug into some of the major issues facing U.S. soccer, everything from potential conflicts of interest to this whole need for a better player development system.
Right, lots to unpack there.
For sure. But now let's get to the good stuff. Like, what's the solution? What's the Football Manifesto's big vision for the future? Well, they don't beat around the bush. They call for a complete overhaul of the whole system,
Whoa, okay.
starting with a brand new professional league.
Wait, hold on. Like, not just reforming MLS, but starting from scratch.
Yep, exactly. They basically argue that MLS is too stuck in its ways, too influenced by the NFL to really make the changes that are needed.
That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
So how would this new league be different? What would make it stand out?
Well, the big thing is fan ownership. Like each club being significantly owned and controlled by the local community.
I can see how that would be appealing to a lot of fans.
Hmm.
But how do you actually, like, go from that idea to a real functioning league?
They lay out this whole multi-pronged approach, starting with finding those passionate fan communities that are already out there and ready to embrace this model.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Those diehard supporters who live and breathe soccer and want to have a real say in how their club is run.
Right, start with the energy that's already there. But wouldn't you also need a ton of money to get something like this off the ground?
Oh, absolutely. The book talks about the need for investors who are on board with this vision and willing to support these fan-owned clubs.
So investors who are in it for the long haul, not just looking for a quick buck.
Exactly. People who see the potential of U.S. soccer and are willing to, shake things up a bit.
Okay, so let's say you've got those passionate fans, you've got those committed investors. What's next? Like, how do you actually build these clubs?
The book actually gets pretty detailed about that. It's got this whole blueprint covering everything from the legal framework to youth academies to TV deals, and they pull a lot of examples from successful clubs around the world.
So it's not just like a theoretical idea, they've actually thought about the practical side of things.
Yeah, and a big part of it is changing how soccer is branded and marketed here in the U.S. Remember that whole soccer teams versus football clubs thing we talked about earlier? They say we need to move away from that like generic corporate branding that you see a lot in MLS and create something that feels more authentic, more connected to the community.
So less about selling jerseys and more about building that sense of belonging, that shared passion.
Right. Think about clubs like Barcelona or Bayern Munich, where the club is like woven into the fabric of the city.
Yeah, it's like a religion over there.
Exactly. And that passion translates into serious economic power, too.
It makes you wonder why we haven't figured that out here yet. I mean, we've got a huge population, tons of passionate fans, and the sport is only getting more popular.
It is kind of a head scratcher. But the book's argument is that we've been held back by this system that values control over competition and innovation.
So the Football Manifesto isn't just a critique, it's like a call to action. It's a roadmap to a whole new future for soccer in the U.S.
And it challenges you, the listener, to be a part of that. Find your local community, connect with other fans, and start demanding more from the beautiful game.
Well said.
Because imagine a future where U.S. cities have those iconic, world-renowned football clubs, the kind that are fueled by passionate, invested communities. That future is possible, but it's up to us to make it happen.
That's a powerful message to end on. The Football Manifesto definitely gave us a lot to think about. It's been a fascinating deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious.